one of the first ones to be developed out from a DAO perspective, because you have to pay people, you have to invest your money. Maybe there's a lot of important components within any DAO, but the treasury is probably one of the most important. So I guess it's not surprising that would be one of the first areas to really become a little bit more, I guess, professional in its management, if you will, just because of the need.
Yeah, exactly. I think I would almost phrase it as there's three main things that if you think about the large protocol DAOs, which is the ones we focus on, there's three main things that on-chain governance enables. One is protocol upgrades. The second is asset listings, like on Aave, it's sort of listing Curve Finance as an asset, and the third is treasury actions. And the treasury is this shared resource that this community of token holders gets to decide how it's being used, and that is a very, very critical function of governance, and I think it's still extremely undervalued. Even though there's attention in treasuries, I think it's undervalued because it requires innovation to unlock. That's why, in some ways, I actually dislike the term management, because these strategies kind of need to be unlocked, right? And we actually need to build new types of actions for these treasuries, for them to be for more of them, more of the treasury to be allocated and spent. It does require like more than just a sort of copying of how corporate treasuries work, because in some ways they're similar, but in a lot of ways they're really different given the dynamics it does.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And from a CoinShift perspective, where our initial product is mainly around payouts, we're bringing out a more comprehensive solution that's going to involve a lot of other areas, some of which we'll probably touch on. So following what Llama is doing is critical for us as well, just to understand things around budgeting, things around maybe accounting, tax, asset allocation, if we talk about diversification. So everything you're doing, it's like you said, it's not just copying from traditional finance, although there are some similar elements. It really is building out something completely new and relevant for the Web3 space, which I've said Llama seems to be really at the forefront of that. So I guess we spoke about kind of having a best practice for DAOs, and you're working with a lot of different DAOs yourself, obviously, mainly the larger ones. When you come in for the first time, do you kind of have your own structure that says, okay, let's do our own evaluation of where they are today? And if you could just kind of walk us through at a high level what you're looking at to kind of evaluate a DAO as far as how they're handling their treasury. So I guess this really gets into what is best practice in your view.
Yeah, I think the first thing is that the treasury is just it's just a medium to sort of grow the DAO, and so in the sense that there is a goal, which is the DAO needs to accomplish some of its key KPIs. It needs to grow, it needs to survive, it needs to thrive, it needs to pay contributors, grow users, grow revenue, sort of things like that, and have longevity, exist for hundreds of years, and fund whatever it values funding. And so the specifics sort of really differ DAO to DAO, but the treasury, we sort of really view the treasury as it should serve the needs of the DAO. And so the first thing, for example, with Aave that we put out was a sort of Aave treasury vision doc, and that sort of stated what the goals of Aave broadly were, and how the treasury can help accomplish that, and like what types of things broadly fit within that mandate, and maybe what wouldn't. The thing we do kind of next is kind of a broad risk management framework, and so that would be you generally don't want say 99% of the treasury in this really liquid in this really liquid token, or you don't you sort of want the treasury to say have 2 to 4 years of stable coins to pay critical expenses, and these DAOs are really, like, over the last year actually, DAOs are spending actually much more, and I know that CoinShift is is well aware of that because you guys are powering a lot of payments. And I think as DAOs spend more, like the first for the large protocol DAOs, the first unlock has been these grants programs, but eventually there'll be more such unlocks, and but as these treasuries spend more, like they should probably have stable assets, because if there's a market drawdown, if there's generally, if you want to pay contributors, it's sort of good to have stables in the treasury to sort of be able to fund that. So second, I'd say is the risk management portion, and then the third is the implementation of specific strategies. And so in a way that to do it in sort of a DeFi native way, you'd want to think through how you can say achieve a particular objective, say diversify into stablecoins, earn yield, or sort of accrue this other asset through a token swap, but in a way that again furthers the goals of the DAO. And so one proposal we have with Aave is depositing A tokens into these balance of E2 pools, and you earn additional yield for these A tokens, but also you accrue meta governance power in Balancer, and Aave has a close relationship with Balancer, and so it sort of makes sense for Aave to slowly accrue more meta governance power and maybe build out that function within Aave DAO. And so that's an example of what an action would be that fits within the broad goals of Aave, and can expand sort of Aave's influence in the DeFi ecosystem, but accomplish some of the investment type goals, which is you sort of earn additional yield, you you sort of execute that fully on chain and trustlessly, which I think is another big component of how we sort of go about things. Like we want to be as DeFi and DAO native as possible, and so any of these actions we take, we want it to be on chain and trustless, and executed via smart contracts. And so we kind of generally move away from kind of the more OTC or KYC things, like like the ecosystem evolves, and so we might do that at some point. But we typically prefer actions that are say continuous, can be open, done via a mechanism that is DeFi native, and that minimizes the risk or control in the hands of any one player. And so we kind of generally want to limit people's individuals' ability to say transfer treasury funds to their own address or something like that. And I think that it's important to have systems that that allow for DAOs to operate within a constrained sandbox when they're allocating the treasury.
The a lot of things, a lot of questions from that. So diversification clearly is a major topic. So let's jump into that. Before I do, though, just one question and more general, which is you've been doing this for some time. You're working with a lot of the major DAOs, clearly. Just the state of the treasury market today compared to, say, a year ago. We're going to talk about diversification, for example. Has the situation there improved? The general overall professional management, if you will, of treasuries, has that noticeably improved? Or just kind of the big trends, what have you seen over the past, say, 12, 18 months?
Good question. I think, one, there's more attention to treasuries. I think when I first started off, no one really valued that this was an important thing, and that includes people building products, that includes resources within the DAO, general attention of the DeFi market and things like that. And so now I think it's very clear that there's probably $15+ billion in some of the top 50 treasuries. That's a lot of capital, and this is even probably after the market drawdown, and so it was probably much higher before. There's that if you think that more complex activity is going to happen in a digital native way, and more of that activity needs to be coordinated in a digitally native way, then you would naturally think that DAOs will grow in number as well as size, and so these treasuries will eventually be hundreds of billions of dollars or trillions of dollars, in the span of 10+ years. And so one, like the size of treasuries have grown. Two, spending has increased, and so if you think about like spending, say, a year to 2 years back, it was definitely 2 years back. It was hardly anything from the large. I'm thinking about the top 10 or 20 protocol DAOs. Maybe MakerDAO is one exception, but they actually had a bunch of spending right from the DAO through these working groups. But yeah, a lot of other DAOs didn't really have spending. Versus now, Uniswap, Aave, Compound, DYDX, Pool Together all have grants programs funded by the Treasury. Index Coop, Yarn, Gitcoin, Maker all have internal working groups and paid contributors from the Treasury. By rough estimates, these DAOs, just these DAOs alone, spend over $100 million a year combined in native tokens, and that includes spending on liquidity mining campaigns, and so that I'd say is a big difference versus last year, 2 years back, and that again justifies the need to have stablecoins again, because spending is clearly increased significantly, and you kind of need to have stable assets if you want to continue spending in the same rate. I think liquidity provisioning has evolved over time, and you had traditional liquidity mining be powered by Compound initially, and then Aave and a bunch of other protocols. And I think now with the DeFi 2.0 stack, with Fei Protocol, Ondo Finance, Tokamak, Olympus Pro, you just have more options of things beyond traditional liquidity mining, whether that's liquidity as a service, which Fei and Ondo does, or that's protocol on liquidity powered by Olympus Pro, and so I think that is another big development. And so there's this possibility that the Treasury will have a bunch of LP tokens, and there's a way then you need to use or deploy those LP tokens.
Well, then, just to jump right in into more detail around diversification. Clearly, it's one of the main areas. Just that topic in general first. How has that changed over the past year? Are more protocols now aware of the need to diversify, and has that happened? Or I remember a Messari report, a little bit dated now, saying that really not much has changed. So that was maybe over 6 months ago. So what is your take on, I guess, the recognition that diversification is a huge issue within DAO treasuries today?
I think still the top 10 to 20 protocols are extremely concentrated in their native token. They have over 90-95% of their treasury balance in native tokens. So the problem hasn't the problem has been recognized now, but I think the solutions are kind of still required, and pretty much like what we're heads down working on now. And it seems like a simple problem. It seems like you have native tokens, just sell them and get stablecoins, get USDC or DAI. The problem is to do it in a DeFi DAO native way. There's unique things that a DAO that a DAO kind of experiences versus say a DeFi user that is just selling these tokens on Uniswap. And few of those problems are DAOs are public and operate through an on-chain governance system, and so any action you take, if you want to do it on chain and you want to sort of have it public or have it go through a governance vote, then you do risk chances of front running, chances of getting sandwiched due to MEV. There's all these other risks that are hard versus if you were just executing a off-chain OTC trade. I think the second one is that it is like DAOs are generally larger, and so if Uniswap is doing a treasury diversification, it probably